Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar in our Griffeye Analyze webinar series. My name is Eric Oldenburg. I'm the law enforcement liaison for Griffeye in North America. I was a police officer in the city of Phoenix for 25 years, 15 years of which was doing crimes against children investigations, and now I work for the company being a liaison for anybody who uses the software. My job is to make sure you guys are successful with this tool. So with that being said, today we're going to be talking about how to leverage GPS data within your digital media investigations. And first and foremost, we'll talk about what we're going to discuss. First, we'll talk about how to locate files within your investigation, where the GPS information is and how to filter down to those files, and how to actually map the coordinates and map them on an actual map. The developers have done a really good job and made some really good changes to our mapping functionality, adding a lot of improvements. But again, it all requires feedback from you guys. That's pretty much what's important. I'm also going to talk about how to export your maps and your data to send it to other applications. And then we'll talk about how to build a timeline using our reverse geolocating app. Now, before we get started, I want to let you guys know I am fighting off a cough or a cold here pretty bad. I'm going to try to mute the mic if I start coughing. So if there's some moments of silence, I'm just muting the mic to cough. So I apologize for that. All right, so let's switch our screen over to my Griffeye installation or my program. And all right, right now we're looking at our case that I have open called Where Am I? Also, if you guys have any questions along the way, just go ahead and I think there's a question and answer functionality within this new webinar software that we're using. This is my first time using this software, so I apologize if it's buggy or there's a couple issues that we have. All right, so first and foremost, let's talk about where the GPS information is within your case. GPS information is, when I talk about mapping GPS coordinates, it's embedded within the actual files. If the device that took the picture has the ability to geolocate where the photo was taken, it will do so and include it in the EXIF information embedded right within the file. So you can move the file, you can copy it somewhere, you can change the file extension, whatever you want. That EXIF information is still going to contain GPS coordinates. But again, it's dependent on whether or not that device has a GPS radio and it has that ability. So within your case, a very quick visual way to find out whether or not a file has GPS coordinates is to look at the thumbnail header icons across the top. And you'll notice that the thumbnail header icon for EXIF information is a map with a push pin in it. Very simple. And if I want to see where that picture was taken on a map, I just select the file and click it. Oh, sorry, this is from a previous one. I'm going to zoom back out. And I select the file, and there it's showing me that image was taken in Sao Paulo, Brazil. For those of you who've used this tool before, you'll notice that there is no window right here that says find files with GPS, or I'm sorry, filter to the GPS fence that you create. That filter has been changed, and I'm going to show you about that here in a little bit. At the top of this screen, you'll see that we have several GPS functions. We can show the selected file on Google Maps. So if I select this, it's going to kick me over to my default web browser and open it up on Google Maps, where I can zoom in, I can change to satellite view, I can kind of do whatever I want here within the Google Maps function. I can also create a KML file for the selected files, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. We'll come back to that. We have the ability to save this map as an image. So if I select this, it just asks me where I want to put it. By default, it's going to go back to the previous file you're in. I can name this map and save it if I wanted to, and you'll have an image of that. We have some map settings as well. Maps, which we can use our OpenStreetMaps, which is our online maps. And as you can see here, this is a direct connect to the internet to OpenStreetMaps. But if you were on an offline device, you could switch to using an offline map, and you would just select which shape file that you want. Notice the path here is Program Files, Griffeye Technology, Griffeye Analyze Maps. and I can select any shape file that I want. Depending on your jurisdiction, you may have shape files available to you. I know in America, states and counties have shape files that you can load into here and get yourself a little more granularity in your mapping. Because if I switch this to offline maps, you'll see that I only have country borders. If I was to switch that to, if I was to switch this to just the USA, you'll see that I only have state borders and I have nothing else there. But I'm going to switch this back to my OpenStreetMaps because I am connected to the internet and I like that. We also have the ability over here to zoom to the file. If you have something like that, you can hit zoom and it'll actually center on whatever file you've selected. And then I can, if I'm zoomed way in, I can click this little earth and come all the way back out. Now that's if I want to look at one file, and that's a pretty it's a very non-efficient way to locate files with GPS by just going through and looking at the thumbnail headers. Oh yeah, before I forget, to make this window disappear counterintuitively, we do not click on this push pin. That'll make it persistent. You just click away from it, it'll go away. So I've selected this file and here's the GPS information. I hover over it, it says there's the, it does have GPS, but the coordinates, if I want to see where they are, in my information panel on my selected file, if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see we have latitude and longitude. And then if you go into your EXIF info tab and scroll down, you'll get, or excuse me, right here, you'll get these GPS position, you'll get the full coordinates right there. So now I want to look for all the files in my case that have GPS. Now we can use our filters, but they've kind of moved the our GPS filtering around. But luckily our EXIF filters, because remember GPS coordinates are embedded in our EXIF data. I want to open up my EXIF filter underneath my EXIF tab, and I have this filter files with GPS data. So if I quickly want to show all the files that were taken that have GPS information in my case, I would just simply filter down to files with GPS. And now you'll see that every single one of these, the EXIF icon as a thumbnail with a push pin in it. One other thing I wanted to point out to you guys, it's kind of a new feature, is you'll see here on our filters window, up at the cross, we have all our tabs, EXIF, File, Intelligence, and Apps, but we have this new Star tab right here too. And Star is going to be your favorite filters. This is, I made these all my favorites. Oh, excuse me. If I select it, these are all the files I've made my favorites because I use them all the time. Camera, make, model, serial number, date, the EXIF date. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And file types, locations as well. So now I've, my filters down here show that I've just showing files with GPS data. Now, what's really cool about the new mapping function now is, now that I have all these files filtered down to 105 files, I can then, I can actually just switch to the map tab, which is down at the bottom here. If you do not see the map tab in your installation, it's very easy to turn on. Just go up to the view tab and make sure map is highlighted in blue. And mine is, so I know I'm good to go. Now, when I switch over to the map function, oh, I got to zoom back out, sorry, to show the world. It shows me all the files in my case clustered. So you can see that whoever was doing this traveling, in this case, it was me. There's 16 files that were taken, it looks like, in the Western United States, 15 in Brazil, 15 more, it looks like, in Germany around Munich, and then 20 in Norway, and 19 in Hong Kong area, and then 20 more down in Australia. So this is pretty cool. It's giving me a good overview. Oh, one other thing I wanted to show you that I forgot to mention in your map settings. You'll see up at the top here, we have similar buttons in the map tab as we did in this map window. The buttons are similar, but you see these action buttons are a little different. So if I switch back to the map tab, one setting I didn't talk to you about was visualizations. We now have the ability to go from clusters to thumbnails. And the thumbnails are going to be, instead of showing the little pictures or the little numbers of files, it's going to actually show you a thumbnail. Now, you may have considerations with that if you're doing child sex abuse investigations. So for now, we're going to leave this to clusters. But what's cool about this is, as I zoomed into Brazil, and I apologize, my OpenStreetMaps are going pretty slow here. That cluster of 15 files has broken out into 2 separate locations. So as I zoom in more, I can see that these break out, and they further break out even more. Now, none of these files are selected right now, but if I select one of the clusters right there, you'll see the little gray circle appears underneath what the cluster of files I've selected. Here, I've just zoomed out and got all 9 of those. Then if I switch back to my thumbnail view, it will show me the 9 files. You'll see they have a blue frame around them that are selected, which is cool, but they may be mixed up down in here, and I don't really see where all of them are. So there's probably a better way to do that. So what I can do now, I'm going to zoom back out to the world. I'm going to show you that we have these 2 buttons here as well. This is how we add a GPS fence. So if you've used this tool before, there's a button, you zoom into what you want and click add a GPS fence, and it will filter our thumbnail and grid view down to just files that are in that fence. But we can, now the button is right here. So for example, if I wanted to zoom into the files right here, there's 16 of them. I haven't filtered anything in the thumbnail view. I still have all 105. But if I click this button, add GPS fence for visible area, I click it, you'll notice that it has activated a second filter for my fence. And if I go back to my thumbnail view, I am filtered down to just those 16 files in that fence that I created by zooming in. So there's all the files zoomed in. Now, the other thing I can do, I'm going to go back out to the world, and I have filtered down to those 16. So that's why when I zoom back out, there's no more files being shown. So I can go over here and clear that GPS fence filter, and now all my files appear. Now, maybe I don't want to do that manually. I want it to automatically, if I zoom into an area, automatically filter my thumbnail my thumbnail and grid view. I can hit this button right next to that, and you'll see there's a little, that black triangle is actually like a play button on a video play control. Excuse me. So if I select that, now it's highlighted in blue. Now I'm going to zoom into these photographs taken in beautiful Australia, and I'm going to zoom in, and it says there's 20 files here. Now I'll switch back to my thumbnail view, and you'll see that it is automatically filtered to whatever my GPS fence was. Oh, there's some cool pictures from the War Memorial. Thanks, Bo, for taking me there. So back to the thumbnail view. Now notice I'm going to zoom out, and now I'm going to zoom back in, let's say, into Germany. And because I've set this to automatically filter, it's going to filter. Now it's just the files and pictures taken in Germany. And notice that videos also have or can have GPS coordinates built in them. So don't think if it's X, if it's only pictures. And that's pretty slick. Also notice that if I go to the grid view, it has also filtered my grid view down to the files that I've selected to filter in that GPS area as well. So that live filtering view is pretty cool. So now let's say I want to select all these 15 files. And when I select them in the map view, again, there's that gray circle. Now I'm going to go back to my GPS functions. And if I go to create KML for selected files, when I click that, this is going to allow me to create a KML file to view in Google Maps or Google Earth. If you have Google Earth installed, you can feed this directly to the program. You'll notice that by default, it's going to put it in our case folder and give it this kind of GUID file name. This options field allows us to add what information is going to be passed on to Google Earth. By default, these are all checked, so I unchecked all the ones except the ones that were important to me. And I did MD5, file name, file path, reverse geocoding, EXIF make model, and EXIF create date. So I'm going to hit create file and map data, and I have this ticked, so it's going to automatically open it with Google Earth. Again, it has to be installed. And then it's going to create this really cool animation, and it's going to zoom me right into where those photographs were taken. And there's the cluster of images, which is pretty cool. I could select one of these, perhaps. This breaks out to 4. And I say, all right, what about this one? And if I select it, it pops up all that information that I passed on. The MD5, the file name, file path, the reverse geocoding where it says that is, and the make, model, and serial number of the file. This if you've attended any of my trainings, you'll know that I like to teach, or I tell everybody a story about my partner who used this exact function when we found a producer who was creating child exploitation of his daughter and several of her friends. My partner grabbed the iTunes backup, brought it in, went to the mapping function, exported everything to a KML, sent it off to Google Earth, and recorded that sweet little animation. And because of that, he won the International Associations of Chiefs of Police Award. So just by making a really cool animation that's already built in. I thought that was pretty funny. Excuse me. So that's basically how to use the mapping function within the tool. One other thing that I wanted to show you guys is you have the ability to create somewhat of a timeline for all the files in your case. Now, this was something that was brought up to me when I gave a module to the students in Norway to do. One of the users in the class quickly answered the question of where was this guy, where has he been, and what has he done, and what order did he go in all these different locations. Because from looking at this map, I can see that this person has traveled the world quite a bit. So in order to figure out where we're going and make it kind of human readable, there's a couple of functions I wanted to show you in the filters. The first is our date, our EXIF date range. Now before, it used to just pop up two calendars and you had to pick the 2 dates. But now it's more visual, which I like. So this is going to allow me to set up a date range of EXIF create date values. Now the difference between create date, the EXIF create date, and created date, so if I look at a file, I'm gonna go back to my thumbnail view and I select this file, the summary, you'll see that we have accessed and write times for this file. And sometimes you also have a created date. I'm sorry, here it is right here, created date. This is the date that the file was created on whatever system you're reviewing it on. So this is the date that this file was copied to this hard drive, laptop, thumb drive, whatever it is. Now the EXIF date is a different date. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom on your summary, you'll see that create date, this is the date that the file was taken, that the picture was taken, not, so this is embedded within EXIF. This won't change if you copy the file to another device because it's embedded within the file. So what I could do is I could select this EXIF create date, and it pops up this visual kind of a timeline going from the oldest file taken in, that's filtered in this case, all the way up to the most recent. And I got these little bars, they're hard to see, but they're those little toggle bars. If I want to filter this down to a particular range, I can drag these in and say, okay, now I'm just looking at files taken between February 11th and March 17th, 2019. And notice now I can drag this. All right, I'm looking at all those. I'm going to drag it over here, and it automatically updates my thumbnail. It automatically filters to whatever date range I put in there. So that's pretty cool. And then I can close that out and I can see exactly where he was. I could say, okay, in the month of February, he went somewhere or he did whatever. That's one quick and dirty way to see the files and filter down. But this isn't super visual because it's kind of hard to tell where he was using these two. But one other thing we have, and this does require the pro version of our tool. Everything I've showed you so far is also available in the core version. But if I go to the Analyze Forensic Market, this reverse geocoding app is what is going to take those GPS coordinates that I talked about earlier, and it's going to turn them into a street address that we can read. So a human readable without having to bring it over to a map and see visually where it is. Now the trick that I saw, or I learned from this student, and I'm going to clear this create date filter because I want to have all my files. The trick I learned from the student was go to the grid view and find your EXIF create date column header. Notice this is about in the middle, but most of your EXIF grid columns are going to be towards the second or I'm sorry, the fourth quarter of this grid. So all the way towards the end, you'll see a lot of these filters have EXIF on a parenthesis. So you want to find that column header. And once you do, you can just drag these horizontally across and drop them wherever you want. So what I've done is I've taken my create date EXIF column, and you'll notice there's also a reverse geocoding column. That was, again, it was pretty far down in here. I don't remember where it was, but it was down there, and I drug it back over here. Now it's as simple as this. All I have to do is now click one of these column headers, and I can sort by date. So I'm sorting the create date, and you'll notice that if I go all the way up to the top here, these are the oldest pictures taken, all the way down to the newest pictures taken within this case that I have. And right next to it, I have the location in human readable format where these files were found, or I'm sorry, where they were taken. So I can see from this that in July and October, November, January, a bunch of pictures were taken in Maricopa County, Arizona, lots of different places around here. And then it looks like sometime between February and March, or the beginning of March, traveled to Australia. And it looks like I was in the Arizona or Australian Capital Territory, of all these pictures. And then it looks like I went to Norway, then Brazil, back to the United States, then to China, back to the United States. So just looking at this, I can tell this guy keeps going back to the United States, so he probably lives in the United States. And that's a really cool way that you can kind of create this timeline and show exactly where it is. Now for reportability, to report this, you'd have to create basically a report and or you could export a CSV of the files you filter down to like this, and you can just select your create date and reverse geocoding columns when you build that report, and you'll have this exact timeline just like this. That is pretty much it. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, under your apps tab, you have to have this. Well, you'll see there's two filters if you enable reverse geocoding. There's locations which lists all the files that I just, excuse me, all the files that I just filtered down to or was showing that timeline of. But I could filter by specific locations as well. Like for instance, I want to grab that. I just filtered down, and this looks like all the pictures that were taken with at the War Memorial there. I can unfilter, or I can clear that filter. I'm going to ask the developers to be able to filter maybe based on just the city or just the country, so we can quickly just see what countries were filtered. But also below that is the reverse geocoding. If you want to just look at the ones that have matches, you can do that. Again, this does require that you have the pro version, and when you process a case on your apps tab, you select reverse geocoding to allow the tool to reverse or turn those coordinates into something that's human readable. All right, that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to discuss today. So are there any questions that you guys might have? If you do, I'm not sure exactly. I have a question and answer panel here, and I have a list of all the attendees, but I'm not sure how you would answer or ask a question. I think you can raise hands or do stuff like that, but I'm not even sure. So I'll get that figured out before the next webinar. All right, excellent. If there's no more questions, I want to thank you guys for your time. I want to thank the developers for making our mapping that much better. And remember, guys, they're always constantly trying to improve this tool based on your feedback. So if you have questions or if you have a feedback that you want to get to the developers, send it to me, eric.oldenburg@griffeye.com. Very easy email address. If you can probably find it on the website. It's important that you guys tell them how you want this tool built. Our developers are really good about listening to what works for us and what doesn't. And again, my job is to take that information, get it to the developers, and make sure they're making priorities of the things that we're using the most. So please keep that feedback coming in. And again, thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll see you at the next one.